I want to address you today on the topic, what is the use of conflict? And it's been set up very nicely with Joel's testimony, the song we just heard from the choir, and from the reading that you heard. There is no way that you could miss the tensions in the scriptures that you heard. There's the tension between John's disciples and Jesus' disciples. There's the tension between the Pharisees and Jesus. Tension between a woman and Jesus. Tension between the disciples and the woman as they see Jesus speaking to this woman. And tensions within themselves. And you know by now that conflict arises from tensions. Now, I don't know anybody personally who loves conflict. I know some people who can be cantankerous and some people who can be difficult, and they thrive on conflict. I know at least one public figure who loves conflict and who loves to get the rest of us into conflict and who seems to live on conflict. The people whom we know who either like conflict or who thrive on conflict tend to be a menace to the rest of us. We don't like to be around people who love conflict. We rather like to be around those who do some meaningful things with or away from conflict. Conflict leads to stress. And conflict, even though it arises from tensions which are themselves stressful, and the scientists tell us that we can't live without stress. Anybody who has no stress is dead. It really is about the measure of stress we carry. Because stress that is on steroids leads to illness, cancers, all kinds of emotional and physical disfigurement. So this passage of scripture speaks to us in a very special way today. Last Sunday, when we were in John chapter 3, we encountered John the Baptist with Jesus beginning his public ministry. John declaring that it is time for him to decrease while Jesus increases. It arose from an argument that the disciples of John had with some Pharisees and some Jews. And it arose from a conflict about ceremonial washings and baptism. And all of that came to a head in John the Baptist declaring, look, I am going to lay this conflict to rest right away because I must decrease and Jesus must increase. And so the tensions continue. For at the beginning of this passage of scripture, the Pharisees heard that Jesus was baptizing more disciples than John the Baptist was. And even though John the Baptist had set it to rest, the Pharisees were still carrying the grudge. The Pharisees were still unsettled within themselves. The Pharisees were unhappy about what was happening in their neck of the woods. And so the passage begins with Jesus coming to know that the Pharisees had heard that he was baptizing more disciples than John. And then what was his response? His response was to walk away. To walk away. And there is the first of 4 lessons I want to leave with you about what is the use of conflict. There are 4 things we could do with conflict. And the first of them is that we can avoid conflict. We can avoid conflict just like Jesus did. Jesus heard that the disciples heard that the Pharisees heard that he was baptizing more disciples than John. And Jesus knew instinctively that these guys were up to no good, that they were going to make life difficult for him. Where was he? If you remember the map of the Holy Land, Judea is down at the south near the, what's that sea? The Dead Sea. And up the top at the Sea of Galilee, or really a Lake of Galilee, is Galilee. And in between Galilee in the north and Judea in the south is Samaria. Now, you remember how Jesus is referred to? He's either referred to as Jesus of Nazareth or Jesus the man of Galilee. Nazareth is a town in Galilee. Remember that Jesus' parents belonged to Galilee. And the reason he was born all down in the south in Bethlehem was because of a journey they had to make in response to what the government wanted. And they had to go to Judea, to Jerusalem, which is the capital of Judea. So get the picture. Up north is Galilee. That's where Jesus' hometown was. But he had moved down from Galilee and had gone down to Judea where he was doing ministry. That is where he was baptizing. That's where John was baptizing. That's about a 60 to 70 mile distance. So Jesus is down south in Judea, and his response when he hears that the Pharisees are coming to make trouble is that he decides to go back up to Galilee. That's what the scriptures tell us. He had to go through Samaria to get to Galilee. So Jesus' response to conflict, the first of them, is to avoid it. You could avoid conflict when it is petty. It might be petty. This was petty. There was no reason for Jesus to waste his energy on something that John the Baptist had already settled. Jesus didn't see that as his fight. If the Pharisees want to fight, I'm going to let them fight by themselves. They're not going to fight me. I'm going to walk away. I'm going to avoid conflict. The conflict might not just be petty. The conflict might be unnecessary. This was unnecessary. John had already settled it. I am not fighting Jesus. Why do you want to fight him? I must decrease. He must increase. You got to live with it. Jesus walks away. Conflict that we should walk away from might be petty. It might be unnecessary. But as petty as it seems, and as unnecessary as it seems, it may also be dangerous. The Pharisees, as we would come to recognize from all the Gospels, weren't nice people. They would eventually set up one of Jesus' 12 to set him up to have him crucified. On more than one occasion, they gritted their teeth at him and they were coming at him to cheer him up. And he disappeared from their presence. They were religious men. They were holy men. But they were dangerous men. I hope we don't know any holy and religious people like that. Good luck. So that is the first of Jesus' responses to conflict. And it can be yours. You can walk away, avoid it. Now, you heard Joel's story. And you know the story about many black men and women driving while black, walking while black. And I call that conflict while black. There's a perspective that some people who are not of our color have of people of our color. You may argue all you want that there are some of us who give them the reason to think that all of us are like that. But that's victim blaming. We are valuable. And there are times when, and you hear the stories of all kinds of parents who have to have the talk with their sons about how to respond when who they are presents in the minds of those they meet conflict that they interpret our color to be. And most times the parents advise their sons, walk away. Find ways to avoid that conflict. I've been stopped many times. And I used to be a police officer. I used to drive marked and unmarked vehicles. So when they stop me, I know how to be polite. For they never have any bad reason to stop me. And they never want to search me. And I imagine there's something about me. I'm not a big guy. I'm not an ugly guy. I don't care what you think. They're always kind to me. In fact, more than once they cut me some slack. When I made a U-turn I shouldn't make, or when I proceeded through the light that I saw was amber and they thought they saw red. Find ways to walk away from conflict. I don't know that church people do that very well, by the way. Joel's story is littered with times when people created conflict for her. I imagine that if any of us had the opportunity, and we should create such opportunities, by the way, we should create opportunities like this many Sundays in a year when we hear other people's story. Don't just wait for Black History Month. This was valuable, very valuable. And I think that we need to hear more and more of our stories. I bet anybody who speaks and tells us their life story, you would hear the conflict. And hopefully you would be able to tell of times you walked away from conflict. Is that not our story? Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. This grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. Live by grace. Learn how to walk away from conflict. Avoiding conflict is the first of 4 things we could do because Jesus did it. There's a second thing that Jesus does with conflict. He doesn't only avoid it, but in avoiding it, he uses it. So he doesn't stay in Judea where the Pharisees are going to find him and create a petty and unnecessary and a dangerous situation. He decides to go up to Galilee, go away from the threat. He uses conflict. And here's how he uses it. He uses conflict by retaining his energy. He could have stayed in Galilee, in Judea, and fought with the Pharisees. There are many times he couldn't avoid the Pharisees, and he did have arguments with them, and not the kind of argument that some of us have with others, but questions, discussions. And when he spoke, they would scratch their heads and say, "We never heard anybody speak like this. Who is this?" Sometimes they would say it marveling. Sometimes they would say it in anger. "Who the hell does he think he is effectively what they would say. And they would rush at him. There were many times he would do that, but not this time. Somehow he sensed that this was not the time to wrangle with them. So he uses the conflict. He retains his energy. Don't waste your energy on every conflict that comes your way. Learn how to walk away. Retain your energy by retreating. Retreat. To retreat is not to be weak. To retreat is to be wise. Yeah. To retreat is to retain your energy for a real fight. He doesn't only retain his energy, but he redirects his energy. He refocuses. And that is what happens as he goes through Samaria. He meets this woman, and that is where he spends the energy that he otherwise would have wasted on the Pharisees. It took a lot of energy to have this discussion with this woman. A lot of energy. She was combative. She was defensive. She was a little bit difficult. But it didn't flare up because Jesus had good energy. and he decided to use it meaningfully. That's what he did with the conflict that began with the Pharisees coming for him, but which was now transferred through the woman to him. There was conflict between this woman and Jesus. There was conflict. First of all, she was a woman. Secondly, she was a Samaritan woman. Women did not speak to men in public like that. Samaritans did not have dealings with Jews, as she reminded him. It was unusual. She was taken aback with the fact that this Jew was behaving as a supremacist. Give me a drink. What are you talking about? And she backs off of it. And Jesus says, if you knew who was asking you for this drink of water, you'd give him. There was tension. There was already conflict. But Jesus used that conflict to refocus his energy into a person for whom it eventually did good. We didn't read the rest of the passage, but you know how the rest of the story went. Eventually the woman dumped her bucket and ran off to tell all the people, look, I've met a man who knows me inside out, and he didn't judge me. He was kind to me. Could this be Jesus? Yes, he is. Come and see him. And John chapter 4 ends with a lot of people coming to find Jesus because of the woman's testimony to them. Good energy that he would have wasted staying in Judea, fighting with the Pharisees. Because he turned away and walked away, he could use that conflict for something more beneficial. Think about the times when we stood up to fight. Think about the things we fight about. Think about the things that waste our energy. Could we not do better? Does not Jesus challenge us about how to use energy? He doesn't only use energy, conflict by retaining his energy, by refocusing his energy, but he also uses it by rebooting his energy. Where was he going? He was going to Galilee. Where was Galilee? It was home. Sometimes we have to go back home. Assuming that home is the place where we recharge. Assuming that home is the safe space that it ought to be. Assuming that home is the place where we can let our hair down. Assuming that home is the place where we can rest. But if even your home is not like that, understand what home means symbolically in this passage of scripture. Jesus goes back to the touchstone. He goes back home. Where is home for you? Home for you is in the arms of Jesus. Home for you is in the scriptures of the Lord. Home for you is in the songs that your grandparents taught you. Home for you is in the faith that you hold tight. Home for you is the people who love you, the people who lift you up in prayer. Home. Go back home. Don't stand alone and fight alone. Learn how to move away. Decide where home is and go back home. Recharge your energy there. Because sometimes when we fight, we lose those fights because we overestimated the amount of energy we had, or we overestimated the value of the fight. That didn't really match the value that we apportioned to it. Learn to retreat. Learn to refocus and learn how to recharge at home. That's what you can do with conflict, but only if you leave it alone and avoid it. For in avoiding it, you can use it for good. There's a third thing Jesus does with conflict. He creates it. He creates it. By the very way he addresses the woman. He knows it's a woman. He knows it's a Samaritan woman. He knows that there's this inferiority complex in the minds of Samaritans. And by demanding, that's what he did, a drink of water, he sets up a conflict. Because through the conflict, he wants to be constructive. a very little known technique for dealing with bad situations. He sets up the conflict, and through the conflict, he does a number of things. He, first of all, gets right at the right buttons to press, to draw out of the woman her real problems. And he confronts it not with slapping her all over the face and telling her how nasty and ugly and worthless she was, but he draws out of her real issues so that he could reach her real issues with grace, with love, and with an affection not just something in the heart, but to affect it for better. In other words, Jesus creates conflict, and we know it is good conflict because of how the thing ends. I know people who create conflict. You do too. And somebody laughed up front that I think I don't need to say anything more, because the people we know who create conflict often create it just to make a mess of everything, to have their own way, and to leave the rest of us feeling guilty or whatever. But there are times when we should create conflict. So there are times when we should create a crisis. And I'm putting on my leadership studies hat now. For the best leadership gurus tell us that one of the ways in which you can deal with people who are toxic is to create a crisis that smokes them out. So Jesus creates this crisis with this woman. And he demonstrates to us some of the places where we should create crises. First, we should create a crisis, create a conflict where there is smugness. Smugness. This woman was smug. You're asking me for a water? You're offering it from this well? So is this well better than the well of our father Jacob? I mean, who are you, Mr. Jew? You know, you Jews put us Samaritans down, but we're not as bad as you think we are, you know. There's a smugness. And while she is putting him down, by the way, remember what skeleton she had in her closet. There's a way in which when we are challenging other people about their stuff, we have our stuff. There's that smugness. Jesus creates a conflict to blow up with smugness. There are some situations we might find where people are happy, complacent, and not about to move. I think, and the scriptures tell us, that it is a time to create a conflict, to ring the bell, to raise the alarm that it's not as smug as you think it is. Whether that smugness is in 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, or that smugness is in the Capitol, or that smugness is in Swissvale Council, or that smugness is in the church, or that smugness is among any group in our church. Sometimes when we meet smugness, we may need to create a conflict. And it may be just as simple as saying, something's not right here. Something doesn't feel right here. There's some books I've read that suggest that in church we want to be too nice. And even though we should be sounding the alarm because we don't want to trouble anybody, we try to be nice. Well, Jesus decided to be nice by asking for water, but it was a little bit offensive, and he was thereby creating conflict to address the woman's smugness. You know, about 9 years or so ago, well, more than 9, there was a preacher named Jeremiah Wright out of Chicago. And everybody saw only the soundbite of something that appeared to be ugly that he was saying. And they thought that that was conflicted, not just conflicted, but that it was ugly, not just ugly, but it was blasphemous. Well, only if you heard the soundbite. Now, I don't know how many of you have gone back and listened, it's all over YouTube, and watched that whole sermon or many minutes before what Jeremiah Wright, prophet Jeremiah Wright, I say from this pulpit today. I'm still a little bit miffed that one of his most famous members threw him under the bus, but that's beside the point. What the man was declaring was how many laws that put people like you and me under the bus prevailed in America for years. He was referring to the trail of tears under law that a current man has used as a joke in passing that still hurts those people. And he was working through what everybody who's gone to seminary or anybody who's been to a reasonably good Bible class know, that in the book of Deuteronomy, God says, look, if you do what I tell you to do, there'll be blessings. If you don't do what I tell you to do, there'll be curses. There'll be damnation. I will either bless you or I will damn you. And therein comes Jeremiah Wright's uncomfortable declaration. No, not God bless America with all of these historical ugliness, but God, and because we have put God and that word damn together to make a cuss word, we were not comfortable with it. The man was creating a crisis and a conflict to address American smugness, and we're still smug because we did to him what they always did to every prophet in the Bible. America has become worse since, governmentally. And it is because we refuse to hear the word of the Lord. Well, look, let me move on. We can create conflict to address smugness. We can create conflict to address supremacy. Even though she was the Samaritan, and traditionally the inferior, she was pulling rank on Jesus. Are you better? And is this water better than Jacob's well? Is the water you prepared to give me better than this water in Jacob's well? Are you Jews better than us Samaritans? Even though she was the underdog, she was now behaving as though she was superior. We must create conflict where there is supremacy. I wonder if you know what's been happening to Colin Kaepernick, a native of Minnesota. And there was what's the thing? Help me, somebody who read it. There was some sort of citation there was some citation that they were moving in the Congress in Minnesota to honor black people, and his name was on it. And the Republicans kicked up holy hell to make sure that his name was struck off. They still don't understand. A human life is much better and much more valuable than any national anthem that tells a lie, or any pledge that tells a lie, or any flag that flies over the blood of black people and other Indians and others, and Jews and even whites. We need to create crises and conflict where there is smugness and supremacy. And we need to pray for this woman who is going woman who came through here almost 2 years ago, remember, from Nebraska? A white woman, and she stood right here and gave you greetings. She is a member of the church I pastored back there. I still imagine, and maybe Sue might read this or be watching this on Facebook, I still expect Sue to end up in Washington. We need people. And don't get frightened, Lee. If that's the place where God is leading your wife, just pray and support her. I have a bad habit of envisaging people like you, beginning here, but going all the way, because we need people like you all the way. Because there's smugness and supremacy all the way up. And we need people who were born in places like this, grew up in places like this, to go all the way. It doesn't matter to me which party. But once you come out of something like this, we know you will be good. And we know you will address what God wants you to address. So God bless you tremendously. We must create conflict. We must create conflict where there is sin. And Jesus knew what was happening with this woman. Go and call your husband. Well, naturally, on the other hand, we need to create a conflict where there's mischief, where there's immorality, where there's toxicity, where there's greed. Listen. We really do need to think broadly. There's a bad habit in the church to just zoom in on sexual sins, or anything that is tangential to sexual sins, to abortion, to birth control. And usually it's the women that we want to slap upside the head. While greed and pride and lies and mendicancy and mendaciousness, that's the word, not mendicancy, are flying all over the place. Jesus was hardest on the Pharisees because they were greedy, because they were liars, because they were proud. And we need to take a leaf out of his book. Let me tell you the last thing, then I'll be out of your way. So Jesus avoided conflict. Jesus used conflict. Jesus created conflict. We too should avoid conflict where necessary. Use conflict where we should. Create conflict as we ought. But Jesus also resolved conflict. And we should resolve conflict as well. How did he resolve conflict? Well, with the woman. First of all, with the Pharisees. He resolved that one by walking away. Very often we can resolve conflict by just walking away. Very often we can resolve conflict by refocusing our energy somewhere else. Very often we can resolve conflict by creating new conflict that would be useful and that would end well like this. And he resolved conflict with this woman. This woman walked away less defensive than she was when she met Jesus. Walked away less heavy than she was when she met Jesus. Burdened with her sin, burdened with her own inner conflict. She walked away free. She walked away without shame. She was there in the hot midday sun because she didn't dare meet anybody else because of the shame she was carrying. And yet still, having met Jesus, having met the resolution that Jesus brings for her, she could rush off to everybody she was avoiding and say, come, see, not just this man, but see me. Yes, it's me. It's me who's been avoiding you. It's me who's been ashamed of myself. Here am I. I'm happy. I'm free. Come see this man. What if we could do that for everybody who is deeply conflicted, deeply ashamed, deeply burdened, and depressed, and want to go into a fetal position and die? Well, Jesus resolved conflict. The argument between him and the Pharisees that could have happened, that didn't happen. He resolved conflict. The argument between him and the woman that could could have been nasty if he was as nasty as she was seeking to be. That ended. He resolved conflict. He resolved the conflict. That didn't happen when the men, his disciples, came back and they marveled. What is he talking about? What's he doing there? Not one of them would dare ask him a question, the text says. They had to deal with their own conflict inside of themselves. To some degree, he resolved that. Because when you make people resolve their own conflict in their own heads without having to argue with you, you have resolved conflict. Because if you could help people resolve their own conflict in their own heads by doing something right, by doing something different but valuable, they will have to fix it in their own heads. So the arguments ended. The emptiness of this woman ended. Empty but yet full of conflict. Resolved. The injustice brings conflict. The injustice ended because it seems to me that some woman got her husband back. You forget that part. I mean, there's no way she could run away and say, come see a man who knows everything about me, and then go back. Some woman, I presume, who had lost her husband, was now going to get him back. And there was an injustice. Am I making the deacon choke? Look, I'm serious. There's so many conflicts that people walk around with. And we remember now, look, this is how we tie the scriptures together. Remember what Paul writes to the Corinthians all the way in his second letter? That we are reconciled to God. Therefore, we must now go and reconcile others to God. God has given us the ministry of reconciliation. We are ambassadors. We are resolvers. We are given the ministry of resolution to address injustice, to address sinfulness, to address conflict, to address all of these things that beat people down. We are given the grace. And so the question is, what awaits us? This is Black History Month, but yes, even if it weren't, what conflicts await us, wherever we may be? In your workplace tomorrow, in your family, right here in this church. What conflicts await our ministry? What conflicts can we walk away from? What conflicts can we address by using the conflict to build up? What conflicts in others await our resolution? It's not just conflict and tensions that we see in this text. Let me throw out another word to use, turmoil. There was turmoil in the Pharisees. For something simple and petty, Jesus is baptizing more people than John, and they want to fight because of that. Turmoil. There was turmoil in the woman, to the degree that she couldn't even show her face in public. Turmoil. Turmoil in the disciples as they came back and watched Jesus. What's going on here? And turmoil inside of all of them. Turmoil. I wonder if there's some kind of turmoil inside of you as you sit here today. And I wonder how the Holy Spirit wants you to address it. There might be some of it that you may just need to walk away from, because there may be turmoil about things that have happened already. You can't unhappen them. Walk away walk away. Claim that declaration. We've come this far by faith. You're not there anymore. Walk away. Redirect your energy to serving somebody else's turmoil, even while you're in turmoil. That would bless you. Create a conflict where you do see a smugness about sin and selfishness, and just watch how the Spirit uses your ignition to light a flame that recharges new energy. And along the way, resolve conflict within yourself. Talk to someone. Ask God for forgiveness. Ask someone for forgiveness. Help somebody else to come back to somebody else. Resolve it. May God use this word to bless you, to heal you, to use you to go and heal others, to glorify Him, and to inspire hope in others. Amen. Amen. As we sing the closing song, we want to give this opportunity, as we always do, for anyone who is conflicted, who seeks a new peace, new creation within themselves. Only God can give you. As there be some who will come and wait for you, just come, we'll pray with you. We'll seek that peace that passes all understanding. Stand with me.
Be
songs, I'm asking myself, do we really know what we're singing? So when we sang earlier on, I love you, Lord, I love you, Lord, I'm saying, but what does this love really look like, and do we really love Him? Then after that, when we sang, glorify Him, but what does glorifying Him really look like? I'm checking you while you're singing over here, I'm checking myself. We just sang it's well. It's well with my soul. If that's true, it means we are going to leave here today with a measure of energy that will make us useful to somebody along the way. That we will bring good news to somebody who's under a lot of conflict and a lot of difficulty, and we will bless their lives. Lord, as we leave this place now, send us as agents of reconciliation, agents of blessing, agents of resolution for them, that we might bring them to you, so that you whom we know and love might become their God, their Father, their Lord. And we ask all of this through the power of Him who sends us on our way, even Jesus the Christ. Amen. Amen.